Welcome into the Lucas and Lucas podcast. Lucas, Frankel and Mike Lucas here with you after Mike is back from Dallas, Texas. We have a lot to get to, including Kyrie Irving making comments on Twitter on Tuesday, April 25th. So here was a little exchange. Someone tweeted a video of watching an entire Bucks season fall apart because of one dirty play. Has me absolutely speechless. A Nets Twitter account at Brooklyn Nets 85 responded by saying, "Now you know how we feel." Kyrie responded to that tweet by saying, quote, "One of the most disappointing and painful moments of my career. If I don't get hurt in that series, every single one of us on that Brooklyn team / bandwagon would be champions." He was talking about the play where Giannis undercutted him in Game 4 of the 2021 Eastern Conference semifinals. Mike, what was your reaction when you saw the Kyrie tweet, and where do you stand on that whole situation of the 2021 Brooklyn Nets?
Every time Kyrie talks, I feel like I cringe, but this time I totally agree with him. I think he's right. And I have no issue with him tweeting that out because the whole experiment, and this is why me and you differ so much on how much of a disaster the last couple of years have been for the Nets. They were a dumb luck injury away from being a championship team. They almost beat the Bucks without Kyrie Irving and without a healthy James Harden, who was playing on half a leg by the end of that series, based on the supreme ability of Kevin Durant and a couple role guys. And hell, even without those two, if Joe Harris hits one damn shot over a 3-game stretch, they beat the Bucks in that series. So I think he's right. It sucks to see him tweet that because we all know how it ended, and it ended in catastrophic fashion. But I don't have an issue with Kyrie stating a fact.
I don't have an issue with it. It's just like, how many times do I have to hear if the Nets would have just stayed healthy, then they would have won the championship? I'm sick and tired of hearing about it. You know what the reality is, Mike? They didn't. James Harden hurt his hamstring because he wasn't in shape. Kyrie Irving got undercut by Giannis. It was an extremely dirty play, and everything just completely fell apart as you sort of outlined. I'm so sick and tired of hearing about it. Can we just move on to a different topic? Yes, if that 2021 Nets team was completely healthy and Harden and Kyrie never got hurt, yes, they probably win the championship. But they didn't. They are probably never going to win a championship in our lifetime, and that's where things stand with it. So I'm like,
but Frank, that's what sports talk is all about. It's about the what ifs. What if the Portland Trailblazers didn't take Sam Bowie and took Michael Jordan instead? What if the Oklahoma City Thunder had decided to keep James Harden instead of Serge Ibaka? This is what makes the precipice of what we do for a living. So what ifs are what we live for.
I have the answers for you. All right. So if the Blazers would have taken Michael Jordan over Sam Bowie, you know what would have happened? They would have won 6 championships, starting in 1992 to 1995, and then 1996 to 1998. They would have won 6 championships. That's exactly what would have happened. There would have been a game in 1988 instead of at Boston Garden. It would have been at TD Garden. Sorry, instead of at Boston Garden, it would have been at the old Inglewood, California game with the Blazers against the Lakers. Jordan would have dropped 63 points, and Magic Johnson would have said that wasn't God, that was Michael Jordan or something like that, and that's what would have happened. So I have
what happened? Yeah. So what happens if the Thunder decide to keep James Harden instead of Serge Ibaka?
They may or may not have won championships. Like the Thunder thing is not as much of a massive what if as we've seen, because any team that Harden and Westbrook seem to be a part of, as we've seen over the last, 10 years, no matter how talented they are, no matter what sort of has happened over the course of the season, there's always some sort of bad luck associated with it.
So what if Durant doesn't go to Golden State and LeBron ends up winning 2 more titles? Is he the GOAT? I mean, this is what we do for a living, Franco. We are both in the sports talk industry. You can't be sick of what ifs if our entire industry is based on these kind of discussions. I mean, listen, what if Tim Tebow didn't throw the slant to Demaryius Thomas in the playoffs?
Nothing happens. The Steelers weren't that good.
That's my point. The what ifs are like, yes, it sucks that it hurts to go back and relive the what if Kyrie didn't get hurt. But don't tell me how many times we're going to hear about this till we're 70 years old, my friend. Like, just get used to it. Accept it. You're right. It sucks that it keeps getting brought up because we should be champions. We should. But if we should and could, and ifs were $1 million, Franco, we'd be living on a damn island in the Caribbean right now. And instead, you're in Connecticut. I'm in Cleveland. Those are the 2 C words that you don't want to live in when you want to be in the Caribbean. Just accept it.
How many times do we have to hear about this? I'm just sick of it. I'm
You're
sick.
going to hear about it for 50 more years until the Nets win a damn championship.
All right.
You're going to hear about it.
All I know is that if anyone brings this up on Twitter, on the show, and anywhere, I am dismissing it immediately. I am shutting it off. And if it happens in the room that I'm in where people are discussing it, I am leaving the room because I have no interest in partaking in the conversation. I'm done. I've had it.
Okay, next topic. Right. What if you didn't send on the topic?
Then the podcast would have ended. Any other
There
questions?
you go. That's my point. That's what we do here, Frankel. All right, next topic. You said a bunch. Let's go.
I have all the answers. All right, let's since we're talking about the Nets, we'll move to the Nets next.
Okay.
They obviously got swept. They honestly I believe they were leading at halftime in games 2, 3, and 4.
Mm-hmm.
So even though they did get swept, it was a little bit of a closer series and maybe it was made out to be. It could have easily been 2-2 after 4 games, but the reality is Nets were flawed team and just didn't have what it took. And I'm glad it's over because that was an extremely painful series. Just not much enjoyment at all in it. The only sort of silver lining is that the Nets did what they sort of had to do. They got Embiid hurt, and we'll see if the Sixers can sort of stumble here. But it looks like he'll be back for round 2 anyway. So moot point either way. Series is over. Nets got swept. But let's look ahead to next year for the Nets because it's going to be a very intriguing offseason in terms of what this team does. Ben Simmons has 2 more years under contract. Let's play a little game of take them, trash them. Mike, do you see any avenue for the Nets to trade Ben Simmons and, I guess, take him or trash him? Would you take another shot with Ben Simmons on the team next year?
I wouldn't, but I'm not sure. I don't think they have a choice. I think he's an untradeable contract at this point. He's making way too much money and brings you absolutely nothing on the floor, and he's more of a headache than he brings benefit to any team at this point. So I would trash him, but I think the Nets are going to have to take him based on the situation they're in and his money.
Do you have any hope of him returning to any sort of form of being a competent NBA player?
You know me, I'm the eternal optimist. I've been holding on to as much Ben Simmons stock as anyone just because I think the talent is there, and I always bet on talent. But from what I've heard from people who know Ben a lot better than I do personally, and from what we've seen over the course of the last season and change, I'm out. I'm all out.
Well,
anything he gives us from now on, I will be pleasantly surprised. I expect absolutely nothing.
The next player we're talking about is Spencer Dinwiddie, and Mike, I can't stand Spencer Dinwiddie. I used to like him. I can't stand watching him play. It seems like so many times during this series, he was just dribble. 3 seconds left on the shot clock. Then we take a step back 3 that barely hits rim. He is so terrible. He is very frustrating player to watch. He can get you 20 points and 10 assists on any given night, but I just don't feel like that player is conducive to winning. I don't know if he'll be on the team next year. I really hope he's not because that's the first guy I would get rid of, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, you look around the NBA, 57 players averaged 20 points per game this year. 57 players. It's the most in the history of the league. Scoring's at a premium. A lot of guys can score. I know Cam Thomas is on this list. We're going to get to him in a sec. Dinwiddie's a guy in the right role I would take, but the issue with this Nets team is they already have 3 guys that play that exact same off-the-bench scorer, doesn't give you much else role. I like Dinwiddie as a person. I think he's funny. I'm not sure he could come back from Kyle Kuzma calling him Din Shitty Island, which was ironically one of the funniest back and forths on social media in recent history. Based on the current construction of the Nets team, I would let him go. I don't think he has a spot on this Nets team moving forward. But I do like Spencer Dinwiddie. Hope he lands on a team where he can be a 6th, 7th guy, 1 or 2 off the bench, and be kind of the focal point of that second unit.
Next one's a little bit interesting. Cam Johnson's going to be, I believe, a restricted free agent. Seems like he's going to get a nice amount of money here. If you're the Nets, are you doing whatever you can to bring Cam Johnson back?
No, I would if it's the right deal. If someone's going to throw the bank at him, but the Nets are loaded with 3-and-D guys. And I know they're valuable. I understand that he becomes a trade asset, but they have Bridges, Dorian Finney-Smith. They have so many guys.
So Dorian Finney-Smith to you is a keeper. I didn't even put on him because I don't find him that intriguing of a player. But to you, he's
a keeper.
Really? Okay.
Well, I mean, he's under contract for another year and a half, isn't he?
I mean, some of these guys are that we're going to discuss.
Well, but Cam Johnson's a legit restricted free agent, so teams have a chance to go out there. But the Nets have a plethora of 3-and-D guys, those long rangey wings, and if some team's going to throw the bank at Cam Johnson, I think he's a nice player. I don't think he's a great player. So depending on what the offer sheet is for him, I think I'd let him walk. But if you could bring him back for $12, $14 million a year, which is kind of the going price for those wings, I would. But I'm not spending over $15 million on Cam Johnson.
I would like to see him back. I think he's sort of a feel-good player.
Good.
And he shows up every game, plays hard. He's pretty solid. I think he's improved a lot and sort of blossomed in his role here as sort of one of the more featured players in the team. Next up, Joe Harris. going in the final year of his deal. I can't stand Joe Harris. He's completely forgotten how to play basketball. It's unbelievable that the player he used to be pre that Bucks series to post just seems like he's never really gotten back on track at all, never recovered. What a debacle of a player. I hope the Nets immediately just cut him and I never hear from him again.
Yeah, you can't cut him because his money's guaranteed, but if they could find anything to get in return, preferably a big or a true point guard, I would trade him. And you're not going to get a player of better value for Joe Harris in a trade, but at least he could be part of a big money deal. He's an expiring contract. You're able to get something in return for Joe Harris. I don't think he has a spot on this team moving forward.
Seth Curry will definitely be gone, so we're not going to spend too much time on him. The last one
I do love Seth, though. I do want to say, like, Seth has a spot on a very good team.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not sure it's with the Nets, but on some like deep level, high level playoff team, he absolutely has a role.
If the Nets were a contending competitive team, he'd be an unbelievable piece. But where they're at, he has no fit. Last one is Cam Thomas. Man, he is. I mean, when he played and he plays minutes, he just scores and scores and scores. It's hard to say whether the Nets underutilized him, but man, I would just get rid of him just because of the headache the constant headaches surrounding him. He's gone. Move on. I don't want to hear about Cam Thomas anymore. Great scorer. Will win G League MVP every year he plays in the G League, but in the NBA, I just don't see the role for him.
Yeah, he's the hardest one on this list to me, Frank, because when he did play, he had 3 40-point games in a row. I know I said earlier that scoring has never been easier in the league. Teams play literally zero defense in the playoffs. I mean, in the regular season, as we've seen as playoff scores have dwindled. I think I would take another shot with Cam Thomas because especially if you lose Dinwiddie, those minutes of the focal point of the offense on the second team could go to Cam Thomas, and I think you could utilize him a little better in that situation, but he's a scorer, and he offers you nothing else. He plays no defense. He's not a point guard. The ball gets in his hands. It's a black hole. However, he proved to be an efficient scorer when he had the chances. So I would take another shot on him, but I don't think if you lost him, it's like, oh my God, how do we recover? How do we find another Cam Thomas? I think those kind of guys are replaceable, but I do like him, so I would keep Cam Thomas. He's only 21, by the way. He's only 21.
Yes or no? Should the Nets pursue Damian Lillard in the offseason?
Yes, they should. They should. I think here's the thing with the Nets, and I was talking to my dad the other day. Now, Luka is obviously unavailable in a trade.
For now, that could change. If Luka says he wants to be traded, they're going to trade him.
Yeah.
But
I'm saying, as it currently sits, he's probably not on the market.
I mean, wouldn't you have said the same thing about Kevin Durant? That's just don't say that, because if Luka says I do not want to be here, I want to be traded, he's going to get traded. So all right, so just take what you just said, throw it out the window, and move on to your point.
Well, Damian Lillard hasn't said he wants to be traded either, but you just asked him. So regardless, the Nets are the perfect suitor for.
He's tradable though, but he's the guy that you could see being moved. As of now, I know what you're saying, where Luka seems like he's a generational talent. Why would anyone possibly trade him? And so I see your point from there, but Damian Lillard's in a different category. But continue.
I'm just saying the Nets are in a perfect position with young assets, cap flexibility. That's not their own picks, but they do have picks to go acquire a superstar, a high usage superstar. And they have the pieces to fit around him. There are other key pieces. Claxton is not a guy who demands the ball. He's a great pick and roll roller, but you're not throwing post-ups to him. Mikal Bridges, as good as he is offensively, and as much as we saw him develop when he came to the Nets as their primary scorer, I think we can all agree he's not a number one scorer in today's NBA. He's a great number two, a guy who doesn't need a ball a ton to still get points. And then they have shooters elsewhere to fill out the lineup. So they're the kind of team that would be perfect for a Luka Doncic, for a Damian Lillard, who have these long, rangy 3-and-D athletic guys to hide their defensive deficiencies, but also allow them to be the superstars they are offensively. I know Luka's not in the block. Everyone's available, Franco. I know whatever you say, but Luka Doncic on the Nets is literally the perfect marriage. Now, I'm not saying it's realistic. I'm just saying you look at Dallas and what their roster has become, and it's kind of funny because they traded two of their better 3-and-D guys in Dinwiddie and Dorian Finney-Smith, who's their top 3-and-D guy, to Brooklyn. The Brooklyn roster is exactly what Dallas needs to win with Luka, and that's kind of the golden goose I'm holding out for.
We'll see. I'm not holding my breath about it, but we'll see. Obviously, Luka would be great. All right, moving on.
Would you go for Lillard?
I'm a little torn about it. I don't think he is a championship-changing player on a team. I don't think if you get him like that puts you in the category of contending, like being a serious championship contender. It's hard to say. I would lean no, but I could see the only reason why I possibly lean yes is because the Nets have already mortgaged so much with the James Harden trade that you might as well just at least show that you want to remain competitive, and maybe, over the course of time, Mikal Bridges continues to blossom, and, you do get to the point where you're contending seriously in the East. But my initial inclination would be to say no, but I would be intrigued if they did do it.
It's funny, and this may pivot us right to our next topic here, but we've talked about this a lot this week in Cleveland. The Cavs gave up the entire farm, young players, draft picks, pick swaps, every asset they had for Donovan Mitchell. And as good as Donovan Mitchell is, he's not in that tier 1 superstar category. He's a tier 2 star. He's not.
But he was first team all. He's going to make first team all NBA, isn't that?
That's fine. That's fine. But he's only making first team all NBA because Steph Curry didn't play enough games, because Damian Lillard's team tanked and didn't play enough games. And even with that, he's probably a borderline first team all NBA guy. He's great. He's a top 9 to 15 guy in the league, but he's not in that top tier with the Giannis's, the Embiids, the Jokic's, the Stephs, the Lucas. Like, there's tier 1 and then there's tier 2. And Lillard falls into the same category as Mitchell. Really, 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 really good player, but I'm not sure he's the centerpiece of a championship franchise. You look at the last 25 years, Frank, going back to when Tim Duncan got to the Spurs. If you haven't had a top 4 or 5 guy in the league, only the Pistons in 2004 have really won a championship without that top tier guy. And then you could look at Boston with their big 3, and you could argue that Garnett was right on that precipice, but whatever. The Cavs are in a spot now where, as good as Mitchell is, they're not good enough to still compete with the top teams in the East, and they're getting mollywopped here by New York, and we'll talk about this in a sec. I think Lillard might be in that same category. You give all your assets up to Lillard, and that could take you from being a frisky team to a good team, but do you go to being great, and is it worth sacrificing every asset you have to handcuff yourself to a player who is very good, unquestionably a great player, but is he good enough to carry you to a championship? Mitchell, TBD, Lillard, I'm not sure.
I mean, it seems like Kobe Altman got universal praise when he made that deal. Like, everyone was on board with it. The Cavs struck gold. I mean, the Cavs have an unbelievable roster, as we all know. Garland.
They don't have an unbelievable roster.
No, they do have an unbelievable roster.
They have a very good top 3 and no one else.
Garland, Mitchell, Allen, Mobley. I mean, that's an unbelievable 4.
Allen's been pretty terrible this series, and they have no one else besides that.
And by the way, Nick Claxton, better than Jared Allen.
He is. And that's my point. And Nick Claxton is going to get paid, but Jared Allen's making $20 million a year. This Cavs roster, you have Mitchell, you have Garland. Mobley is a blossoming star, but he's still young. Right now, today, he's not a great NBA player. He's solid. He's good, but he's not a great NBA player. And then you look at their bench, they're literally playing guys who wouldn't even sniff the floor on a real playoff roster because they sacrificed and hemorrhaged their entire depth to get him.
So they give up Mark. Who else did they give up besides Markkanen?
So you get Markkanen. They give up Ochai Agbaji, their first-round pick this year.
All right. Agbaji, all right, what difference would he make this year? Okay, all right. Markkanen had a good year.
They can't shoot. The Cavs literally can't shoot. Agbaji would be playing 35 minutes on this team right now.
So how surprised is
picks? Also, Colin Sexton,
who was basically would have been relegated behind Garland and Mitchell, and who knows what his role would have been. He probably would have been really frustrated with his role.
Well, yeah, I mean, but he's a high leverage scorer. I mean, he still averaged 17 points a game this year in Utah. So that's a guy who at least would be able to play in the situation. They have 5 picks. So 3 players and 5 picks. And now they're stuck with.
So in your mind, the Mitchell trade was a mistake. You're ready to call that a mistake?
No, I'm not. I think you could argue both sides. I think Altman gets credit for going in. I'm just not sure if going in on any player that's not a Durant level, not in that top tier, is worth it. Look at Minnesota. They hemorrhaged the future for Rudy Gobert.
That's different. That is such an outlier.
Why is that different?
Because Mitchell is like a first team all NBA, one of the premier scorers in the NBA. Everyone knew Gobert was flawed.
Minnesota gave up more for Gobert than
Cleveland. That's because Minnesota's idiots. There's no comparison to the Rudy Gobert trade. Everyone knows that was a debacle. Everyone knows.
Frankel, look at the history of going in on big time players.
Gobert's by far the worst one anyone ever sort of
agreed. Agreed. Anthony Davis has worked out. They won a title. Look at the last 10, 15 massive trades in the NBA. Davis is the only one that's won you a championship. And I think hemorrhaging all your depth to go in on one guy who's not in that top tier is a really, really risky proponent. Because if you don't go from good to great, immediately you have no other assets to improve your team. All the Cavs have this offseason is a mid-level exception. That is their only wiggle room to get better this offseason.
You're not surprised at all the Cavs are about to lose in 5 games to the Knicks?
I picked them to win in 5, and I was blinded by the regular season. I forgot how misleading the regular season was. And, I put my hand up on the show today. The Knicks are going to lose game 5 and then win game 6 back in the Garden. And they have done a tremendous job. They only guard 2 players. They literally have 3 guys in the paint waiting for Mitchell. They don't have anyone guarding Okoro on the 3. They don't have anyone guarding Allen down low. Well, I mean, I guess he's standing by the rim, but they're playing 2-on-5, the Cavs right now.
So if you're the Nets, because this is probably the best case of it, maybe in the league. They have a really solid roster of players, like probably can get you a 6 to 8 seed any given year.
Yeah,
but if you, so it's either that and just keep running it back every year and get the 18th to 20th pick in the draft and it's basically status quo, or you can take a shot at Lillard, get rid of some of your assets and not get rid of, but lose a lot of your assets, and then put yourself in the category of moving into a 1 to 4 seed in the East, and hope that get into the tournament, hope that things sort of break your way, because a lot of times in the playoffs it's whatever team is the healthiest, survival of the fittest wins. So there is that. The reason why these teams get sold on this because of that possibility of things breaking their way when it matters most, maybe things clicking. So I just the whole idea of just sticking with what you have status quo and knowing that basically you have no chance to win the championship, that's a pretty hard sell.
Listen, if I'm Kobe, I do the move again, because you're not signing anyone in Cleveland. And I think Brooklyn and Cleveland, being in 2 completely different markets, play by a little different set of rules. And I'm not saying there's a hard, fast rule that the Nets shouldn't go after Lillard, because he may not elevate them to that championship level. I just think when you look at the totality of these moves, a lot of guys and a lot of GMs and a lot of owners say go in because it's going to sell tickets. We're going to be better. We're going to win. When the reality is the best move for the future of that franchise, if you're looking to win a championship, is wait for the right guy to become available. And there's no listen, Kevin Durant, let's hypothetically say, just hypothetically, Phoenix didn't have the assets to get Durant. Would Durant have wanted to go to Cleveland? I don't know. I have no idea. And maybe Abaji, Markkanen, Sexton, and all those pick swaps would have been enough to get Durant. And Durant comes to Cleveland instead of Mitchell, and you got Durant, Mobley, Allen. That's closer, in my opinion, to a championship team than Mitchell is. So I'm not saying there's a right or wrong answer. I'm not ready to call the Mitchell trade a failure. I'm not saying Altman did wrong by Cleveland. I just think they went from pretty good already to good. I'm just not sure they're great, and they have no real ability to become great unless Mobley takes that next step forward, which we thought he would this year, and he hasn't so far.
We'll see. I think if you have the opportunity to get a player like Donovan Mitchell and you're in a position like the Cavs where with some really intriguing young pieces, that's sort of a move you sort of have to take. But we agree to disagree. Sort of leads us into, I just saw Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, Aaron Rodgers will be formally introduced as a member of the New York Football Jets. The trade was officially finalized on Monday. The Jets gave up a swap first-round picks with Green Bay this year, gave up a conditional second-round pick that turns into a first if Rodgers plays 65% of the snaps. My initial takeaway is I'm just glad this whole saga is over, and now he's here and we can just focus on football. Did the Jets give up more than I thought they would? Probably. Will they win a championship with Rodgers? Probably not. But it's a like the Cavs with Mitchell. If you have an opportunity to get Aaron Rodgers and he says I want to be with the Jets, you sort of have no choice but to do it. My expectations aren't super through the roof for it. I'm not like jumping out of the ceiling here. Oh my God, the Jets are going to win the championship, because Rodgers isn't even the best quarterback in that division. He's probably the 4th or 5th best quarterback in the AFC. So it's a move the Jets made to get them into the playoffs. And maybe once they get in the tournament, as we've sort of outlined, if things break their way and Rodgers just goes on this sort of unbelievable tear, maybe they can win a championship, but I'm not counting on it by any means.
Yeah. Here's in my opinion, a tiny difference between like the Mitchell trade and the Rodgers trade is a quarterback gets hot at the right time. That could be what wins you a championship. Like the quarterback play is more indicative on winning and losing than any guard, particularly in the NBA. Wings have traditionally won NBA championships. Undersized guards outside of Steph Curry really have never been the predominant player on a championship team. However, the Jets gave up a lot. And guess what? Kudos to them. The Jets have a championship roster, or they had a championship roster outside of quarterback. And now they have a quarterback. And in football, unlike basketball, I think your championship window is a lot smaller. Like, so many guys are tough to retain. When you draft well, it's a blessing, and it's also a curse because usually you have to sign all those guys in consecutive years, and it adds up real quick. And that salary cap is a pain in the ass, and you end up losing some good players on the backside. So the Jets had a window here with Zach Wilson being on a rookie deal and Garrett Wilson being on a rookie deal, Sauce Gardner being on a rookie deal. Quinnen Williams just got, did he get paid or is he about to get paid?
Hoping it's done. I mean, sooner rather than later. It's, sort of taking their sweet time with this.
So he's on his, still on his rookie deal. So they had the opportunity to add a player of Rodgers' salary cap and status into the mix where everyone else was already in place. Breece Hall, another guy. So I give him all the credit in the world. I just think the AFC is a damn gauntlet this year, man. There are so many good teams in the AFC that in most years, I think this move would put the Jets and a team of their caliber into like, oh, they're surefire Super Bowl contenders. And like you said, I don't even think they're the best team in their division. And we did this on the show today. There's 9 of the 10 best quarterbacks in the league are in the AFC right now. 9 of the 10.
It's pretty amazing. All I want is a home playoff game. The Jets haven't had a home playoff game since 2002. It just feels like it's never going to happen again. But now and then they're going to have so many primetime games. Like the Jets have been such out of the primetime spotlight for so long. It's going to be refreshing to see like them finally get some national attention and just hope that. And obviously, the expectation is that there's going to be a lot of unnecessary bad distractions, and that sort of just comes with the territory of having a guy like Aaron Rodgers, and especially if he struggled, he's going to get absolutely eviscerated. But we're just taking this day by day over here, and we'll sort of see how this sort of plays out. Last thing before we go, the NFL draft is on Thursday. Will Levis, there was, I guess, a Reddit post, and he shut up the boards. Is now plus 400 to be the first overall pick in the NFL draft. Just about 24 hours ago, he was plus 5,000.
Yeah, ridiculous.
Seems like it's going to be Bryce Young, right? Or do you believe that this is sort of a Baker Mayfield situation where he sort of comes out of nowhere and goes number one?
No, I'm. If it's not Bryce Young, it'll be C.J. Stroud, I think. But I think Young's the guy. I'm curious, Frank. How much have you watched of the quarterbacks?
Like playing?
Yeah. I mean, like, do you have a good take on how you would rank the 5 quarterbacks?
I mean, I thought a lot about it. I honestly, like, I don't know if any of them are ever going to be like true game-changing stars. I've seen the least of Anthony Richardson and Will Levis, like by far. Those two guys I've watched basically none of. Obviously, Will Levis was on Kentucky. They weren't a great football team. Anthony Richardson had that great win against, I believe, Utah early in the year, and then Florida really fell off after that. So I don't know how good he is going to be. He might, I mean, who knows? Maybe he could end up being, the next generational superstar quarterback, Anthony Richardson. But Bryce Young, I think is just, I just don't know if he has the stature to be a truly elite guy. CJ Stroud, I feel like guys like him have sort of come and gone. I feel like we've just seen like players like those Ohio State quarterbacks, like none of them ever really hit. I mean, Justin Fields maybe has the highest ceiling of all of them. And, there was a lot of talk with the Bears, which were looking to move on from him, but now they're sticking with him. But I don't know. I am not sold on any of these guys being true stars in the NFL.
I'm actually kind of with you, man. Now, granted, as we say this, watch 5 of these guys all 5 become absolutely generational talents, and it's the best crop of quarterbacks that have ever come out. But I've watched a lot of these guys a lot. Being in Columbia or in Ohio this year, I watched a ton of Ohio State. Being in SEC country the last couple of years, I saw Hendon Hooker, I saw Anthony Richardson, I saw Will Levis, I saw Bryce Young up close and personal twice. If I had to rank them, Frank, I would go Bryce Young at 1. I do think he does some special stuff, but like I'm not confident in his ability to stay upright and healthy over a 10-year career. When you draft a guy first overall, you're hoping to get your franchise quarterback for a decade. I'd go CJ Stroud 2, Anthony Richardson 3, Hendon Hooker 4, and Levis 5. I really don't like Will Levis. I think he's such a boomer bust guy, even more so than Anthony Richardson. But I'm with you. I don't really love any of these guys, man. And if I was picking at the top of this draft, I'd be doing everything in my power to trade down, pick up an extra first-round pick next year, and have the ammo to go get one of the top quarterbacks in next year's class, which is supposed to be 365 days out in advance. a much, much, much stronger quarterback class.
Yeah, I mean,
and draft overall.
And if the Jets didn't get Aaron Rodgers, then I would have been all aboard the tank for Caleb Williams train because he is going to be a true star in this league for a long, long time. That guy I'm super, super, super high on.
Which direction do you want the Jets to go at 15?
I mean, they're probably just going to get an offensive lineman just because they need more insurance for Becton. But I don't know. I never, ever, ever get excited about a team drafting an offensive lineman. It's just such an unsexy thing to do, and I'm not super excited about what they can. I would love Njigba. I love Jackson Smith and Njigba. I think he's going to be a star wide receiver in the NFL. I think obviously the Jets are sort of loaded a receiver with Garrett Wilson, Alan Lazard, Corey Davis,
Nicole Hardman
now. So they just don't have enough room for Njigba. But I would love for them to get a dynamic playmaker like that.
Yeah.
But I'm not. Roderick Jones is my guess for the pick, but I'm not going to be jumping out of my shoes. Oh my God, they just got Roderick Jones. So we'll see what happens.
Is there any guy in the draft that you love? Just Smith and Jigba?
Let me take a look at the. I'm kind of torn about Will Anderson. I thought he was great, but then this past year, it didn't seem like he really had an unbelievable year for Alabama. Jalen Carter's got all the distractions going on with him. We'll never be super excited about a first-round running back.
You know what's crazy? Tyree Wilson, the guy from Texas Tech, was at A&M for 2 years when I was there. He could not get off the third string. Like, I can't believe he's developed into what he's developed because he was a third-string guy for 2 straight years at A&M, and we saw him up close and personal every day, and he was a physical specimen. He's huge. Like, long arms, massive guy, but he always looked slow to me, and now he's a projected top 5 pick. I don't know where that came from, but he's a guy. I hope he does well. Could not have been a nicer guy. Was great in interviews, but never really got a chance to show what he had at A&M. The 2 dudes I love, Frank, the DB from Illinois, Witherspoon. I think it's Devin Witherspoon. He's just all over the place. I can't get enough of him. And Bijan Robinson, I wouldn't take him high. I don't think taking a running back high is smart. The dude is going to be one of the 4 or 5 best running backs in the NFL as a rookie and will be phenomenal over the first 4 or 5 years of his contract. And then he'll be worthless. And whoever drafts him shouldn't re-sign him. But he's going to be phenomenal for 4 or 5 years at that running back position. Dude's a generational talent. It's just he plays a position that is essentially, as replaceable as any in the NFL.
It seems like he'll be a strong candidate to go to the Eagles at number 10, I believe, and we'll see.
If they get Jalen Carter, man, I'm gonna be so salty.
The Eagles?
Yeah, if he falls to 10 because of his, pre-draft stuff, or if they even trade up to get him, package that second first-round pick to move earlier into the top 10, maybe up to 6 in Detroit's pick to draft him. Between him and Jordan Davis on the defensive line again, with the rest of their weapons and, on that D-line, Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, oh man, that just as a Giants fan, I already have nightmares about that happening.
I'm just curious. The most thing, honestly, that I'm looking forward to the most is seeing which quarterback falls the hardest. Whether it's like Stroud, who falls to the outside the top 5. I feel like one of these guys is just going to drop and no one's going to expect it.
I think it's Levis. I really think it's Levis.
I don't know because there's a lot of people saying that he's the most talented. I don't know. It's
your boy Prisco's saying that.
I know Prisco's all over the fact that Will Levis is the best quarterback in the draft, and now we're seeing
he was awesome on the show, by the way.
He's great. Yeah.
Prisco was awesome. And so was Ryan Wilson. We had him on. He was awesome as well.
All right. That will do it for this edition of Lucas podcast. See you all next week. Maybe the Yankees will score some runs. What a concept.